Get your questions ready for this week's 1-hour call-in show all about non-game wildlife in Kentucky. That's the critters that creep and crawl and you don't necessarily hunt. The number to call, 1-800-944-4664.
Tastes like victory.
Deal with Sugar over here. You good dog?
She's 3.5. She's with me all the time.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm Tim Farmer. Tonight we have a 1-hour call-in special all about non-game wildlife in Kentucky. Number to call, 1-800-944-4664. The folks answering your questions to my left, Kate Hayden is an avian biologist. Thanks for being here tonight. To her left, John McGregor is a herpetologist. And to his left, Monty McGregor, not related, mussel biologist. Now, you can send your questions in tonight. We're going to do a few off Facebook, but mainly 1-800-944-4664. Give us your question. We'll try to get on the air and answer as many as we can, as soon as we can. And let's get right off the bat right here. And imagine that. It's a snake question.
Okay.
I'd say there's going to be a few tonight. Frank is from Bell County, and he wants to know how many times can a copperhead have young in a year?
Copperheads have young once a year.
Just once?
Just once, and it's usually in September. And one female will have anywhere from 4 to maybe 12 or 13 young. So, and this time of year, I was just out yesterday, I saw 6 gravid female copperheads sunning themselves next to a concrete bridge. And we're getting a lot of reports in campgrounds and visitor centers and parks. And the copperhead, they're mostly gravid females, and they're trying to find warm places so they can speed up the developing young. And they get into these open situations where people run into them a lot.
Now, you know, we talked years ago. I remember going out with you in the field one time. We did a segment. And, you know, a lot of people think about a copperhead and think it's this rare, seldom seen snake. You say they're one of the most common snakes in certain parts of Kentucky?
Yeah, in most of Kentucky, copperheads are one of the 5 most common snakes. The only place they're not common is the bluegrass. Mm-hmm. And there are a few along the Kentucky River corridor, but places like Bourbon County, I would be surprised if there's any copperheads. But no, if somebody finds one in Bourbon County, send a photo.
He wants to know. Now, you keep track of everything if somebody calls you, and of course they have to have proof, obviously, but you want to know that kind of information.
Oh yeah, I'm always interested in that, and I'll get back to you, and I'll want to know exactly where you saw it, and
we'll give John's home phone number here in just a little while.
I want a photo if I can get one. I'm not going to believe a Bourbon County copperhead without a photograph.
All right, Jeremy's from Leslie County, and he says, is it true that peregrine falcons can reach speeds of over 100 miles an hour?
That is true. They're an extremely fast bird, and they don't reach that speed when they're just flying straight ahead. They reach it in a stoop when they're kind of falling out of the sky towards prey. And I believe they can go up to 200 miles per hour, so they're just amazingly fast.
When they reach those speeds and they actually hit another animal, how do they not just shatter every bone in their body?
Well, they actually, sometimes they do kill with the hit. A lot of hawks, when they catch their prey, they squeeze it to death, but peregrine falcons, they kill with the hit, and then they bite the neck of the prey to kill it. And so it can be very impressive to watch them hunt.
All right, let's take a Facebook question. Renee Vest Pike. And if you're not on our Kentucky Afield Facebook page, please get on it and like it, and you can ask a question tonight. Renee Vest Pike, are there panthers or cougars in Kentucky?
Are there native ones here? We have no evidence that there are, but we do have some valid observations of cougars in the state. Now, where they came from, we're not sure. Were they escaped, released? Did they, they may have wandered in from other areas, But the eastern cougar is considered extinct, and so most of the cougars or panthers that show up in the eastern U.S. are western cougars that probably were brought here in the pet trade, and there is a pet trade in these
There is a
things.
pet
Yeah.
trade, because I ran into a guy one time that, well, let's just say I had a monkey incident, and then when he was putting the monkey back in the truck, there was a tiger in there too.
Yeah.
So anything could happen.
Anything could happen.
Okay. I guess when we talked about the fact that we had a mussel biologist here, Jessica from Bullitt County wants to know, have we gotten rid of zebra mussels in Kentucky? I remember the day when that was the talk. That's all anybody could talk about. What in the world are these zebra mussels going to do to the state of Kentucky? What is that status there?
Well, they're mostly limited to where there are barge traffic. So the Ohio River and other navigable water in the state, they seem to come and go each year. Some years the populations will be very high and more people are complaining about them, and other years they're not as bad. But again, mostly the Ohio River is where they're limited to, and maybe the Kentucky River, the lower Tennessee.
Mike is from Kenton County. He sees a shiny black spider, has a red on top instead of on the bottom.
If it's shiny, it could be a black widow. Their belly is really round and really shiny, kind of up to the size of a pea. And normally there's a red hourglass on the underside, but I've seen them with red markings that run all around the abdomen up on top. If it's a hairy black spider with a red spot on the top, it's a jumping spider and it's harmless.
Mike is from Hardin County. What's the appropriate way to deter roosting buzzards? And he says his neighbor does things you're not supposed to do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a very common issue in Kentucky. Vultures like to roost in numbers, especially in the wintertime. It's kind of a safety in numbers type thing. They'll gather in places where it's warm, down by rivers. Sometimes that ends up in people's front yards. And that can be concerning because underneath the roost it can get messy. And so the best way to deal with that, you can't shoot them because they're a federally protected bird, but you can make them uncomfortable, and the most effective way usually to do that is by using pyrotechnics. Any kind of legal fireworks, anything that you can do in your, with your local governments, that will spook them and make them feel uncomfortable, but abides by all the laws. And that's something that needs to be done at sunset when they're coming to the roost.
Spencer is from Morgan County. Crossbreeding, copperheads and black snake. Do any species?
No. But I'll tell you what causes that story.
Okay.
Hognose snakes, which come in a spotted color phase and a black color phase. And people see a black hognose mating with a spotted hognose, and the things look venomous to begin with. And so they think, okay, here's a black snake mating with a venomous snake. And usually they think it's a copperhead. And I've actually had people bring in a pair that they found mating. It was, a black one and a spotted one. I couldn't convince them it wasn't a black snake mating with a copperhead. But that's where that comes from.
Be prepared. I'm just telling you. There's a lot of snake questions. There is a whole lot. You're going to get worn out today. Cecil's from Jefferson County. Kate, have you heard anything about the falcons at the Dow chemical plant?
Yes, I have. They've worked really well with us. We have a nest box up for them, and I think the birds have nested there for 4 years now. This year they didn't have success, but every other year they have, and so, yep, that's been a good, reliable pair.
Here it is. It came early, guys. Ding, 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 ding. Tim is from Casey County. Are Fish and Wildlife stocking rattlesnakes? Typically, back in the day, that people assumed it was from helicopters with little parachutes. We got it. Can you talk about that?
We do not stock rattlesnakes, and we never have, or copperheads or any other kind of venomous snakes. And I think these stories are probably spread by people who are growing marijuana and trying to discourage folks from finding their fields, so they spread the stories about the Fish and Wildlife stocking the rattlesnakes.
Guys, don't get mad at John. There's just a ton of snake questions. So, you ready? Okay, Bill is from Carroll County. Bright green on top with little black eyes on the side of his head. What kind of snake?
It sounds like a green snake, a rough green snake, or just green snake. They're fairly common all across the state, and you find them usually up off the ground in vines, bushes, shrubs. They eat insects, caterpillars, crickets, roaches, so they're kind of good to have around. And no, they do not make you laugh yourself to death if you're bitten by one. That's a story I've heard in parts of the state. They're completely harmless.
Jason Holstein, whatever happened to the Grampus or Hellbender? And that's a Facebook question.
You know, Hellbenders are not doing as badly as we thought they were. We put the photo in the fishing guide about 3 years ago, and in the last 3 years, I've gotten 8 to 12 Hellbender reports a year, almost always with a photograph, and they're in every major drainage. It's just the biologists can't find them. So we did survey for Hellbender DNA by taking water samples and filtering, and we had Hellbender DNA in 37 of the 41 sample sites across the state, everywhere from the Little River all the way to the Big Sandy drainage. So they're doing fine. We just can't ever find them, and anyone who catches one, I'm really interested in the information, especially with a photo.
Yeah, we're gonna give your home phone number, cell phone number. Carrie is from Caldwell County. Which mussels produce a pearl? Are there any pearl production going on out there?
They can all produce pearls, but most of the time they're very odd shaped and they're not worth very much. But it does kind of take you back to the historical aspect of the pearl production back in the early 1900s, where they would take the freshwater mussels like I have here in front of me, and they would take and make beads and take them over to Japan and China and New Zealand and insert those into freshwater mussels or also into oysters, and they'd make what's called a cultured pearl. And I have a couple of these here on the table where you see that this is a cultured pearl, which is a common product that we buy today. But they were made by first taking a freshwater mussel, something like this big washboard, and cutting a piece of this out, squaring it up, cubing it, and then eventually rounding it off, finally making a nice round insert to put into the oyster. And that's how the pearls were made in the past. So, but they can make a natural pearl by getting a bead of sand or a piece of mussel tissue or something like that, and then making a layer of what we call mother of pearl, which is the shiny part of the mussel around that object.
What happened to the? I remember back in the day in Kentucky Lake and Barkley, we used to see a lot of boats pulling the whatever it was they pulled behind that boat to collect those. What happened to the market, mussel market in Kentucky?
Well, back in 20 years ago, the market was great because the demand for these shells in the pearl production was high, and then the Chinese developed techniques to not have to use these inserts. And then over the last 10 or 15 years, the market has just declined because there's no demand for the shells anymore. There's still a little market out there that's usable. We have some regulations a few years ago that went into place to eliminate the brailing, which is the method they use with dragging the chains in Barkley and Kentucky Lake. And next, in 2016, will be the last year that brailing will be allowed as an official harvest in the state of Kentucky, just because the market is so down.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Naples is from, I can't read what that says, wants to know, and this could be either one of you guys, would a chicken hawk eat a copperhead snake?
Yes.
Have you seen it?
A red-tailed hawk would eat, they love snakes.
Yeah.
I see them flying with snakes every year, and it doesn't matter to the hawk what kind of snake it is.
Lowell is from Breckinridge County. Are there any wolves in Breckinridge County? He heard they let some loose there. maybe when the helicopters were flying by, they just had some extra cargo space. No, we're not making fun of anybody, but you got to realize that inside of Fish and Wildlife, we hear so many tales, and you know most of them just aren't true. And we're not laughing at you, but we're laughing at the situation.
I would laugh at that question, except I think it was this past winter.
Yes.
We actually had a wolf with wolf DNA turn up.
What county was that?
Hart County.
Okay.
So I have no idea where that came from, whether it just took off from somewhere up north and wandered down here, but it was apparently a perfectly good timber wolf, not a wolf dog hybrid or.
Well, but we are not. We repeat, we are not stalking wolves,
No.
coyotes, bears,
And they're not native here. It's kind of like porcupines, you know. We've had a couple of porcupine reports in the last few years, but we don't really have a population of porcupines.
Debbie's from Mason County. Are there any venomous snakes in Mason County? And if so, are they aggressive?
Mason County has a few copperheads. Mason County's mostly outer bluegrass, and they'd be in the kind of the hillier, more forested areas. But Lewis County has a lot of timber rattlesnakes, and so conceivably there might be a few rattlesnakes that just barely get into Mason County from Lewis County.
Just a ton of snake questions. So, John, Joanna Haycraft, I think it's how you say that, wants to know what is the deadliest snake in Kentucky? It's a Facebook question.
I can't think of a reasonable answer. In terms of the severity of the bite, it would be a timber rattlesnake. But even an untreated timber rattlesnake bite, the fatality rate for a human being is less than 5%.
Oh, wow.
So you have a 95% chance of surviving. And if you have medical care, you have a 100% chance of surviving.
Oh, very good.
And a cottonmouth would be next on that list. Cottonmouth deaths are extremely rare, and cottonmouths don't tend to bite. They'll throw that mouth open and rattle their tails. But I've seen Duke Wilder, who used to teach at Murray State, at Murphy's Pond in Hickman County, just put his boot on them and roll them around, and they just go. And he never got bitten doing that.
Wow.
Copperhead bite, and they're likely to bite if you mess with them, and it's extremely painful, but we still don't have a confirmed human death from a copperhead anywhere in Kentucky.
I have a friend who
Causes pain and
recently got
swelling.
bit down in the southern part of the state.
Yeah, and the pygmy rattlesnake bite that's a rare snake, and it only gets this big, and it just doesn't pack much of a wallop.
Bob is from Boone County. Are there any eagle nesting sites in Boone County?
There were. A couple years ago, we had 2 nests along the Ohio River there, but for whatever reason, in the past couple years, we haven't found any there. It's certainly possible they could be there, and we just haven't been able to find them.
Tony and Billy are from Owensboro. Were there any studies done this winter on bluebirds? Population seems to be, they're not seeing as many.
Yeah, bluebirds are known for having high mortality in really rough winters. And so we get a lot of bluebirds in Kentucky in the wintertime, and they roost in larger numbers in bluebird boxes. You'll see 12 bluebirds in a bluebird box. If it gets too cold out, they might freeze to death, and we had such cold nights that last winter that we probably had some mortality in bluebirds, and it seemed like our numbers were down a little bit this year. But we've seen this in the past, and usually there's a pretty quick rebound.
Amy and Eric Willard want to know the status of the box turtle in Kentucky. They live in Mount Washington and have had quite a few of them in the garden this year. How are they doing, as far as you know?
They're doing really well. I see about the same number of box turtles every year, and I keep track of that stuff. And for the past 10 years, I've seen between 125 and 150 box turtles every year. And I don't see any decline, and there doesn't seem to be any threat to them other than the pet trade. And in Kentucky, we're not allowed to sell native wildlife out of state, so you cannot take box turtles from Kentucky and sell them anywhere else.
Delbert's from Hart County, and buzzards are killing his calves. Is that something we know about, or?
Well, this is very unusual. It's possible, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. In recent years, we've had a growth in numbers of black vultures. We have 2 types of vultures in Kentucky. We have turkey vultures and black vultures. And black vultures have expanded their range. We have a lot more of them now. Turkey vultures will not take live prey. They're only interested in dead animals, but black vultures will occasionally take live prey, and sometimes they're known to attack young calves, especially if calving isn't going well. And so if that happens on somebody's farm and they're sure it's vultures, I would encourage them to get pictures and call the USDA Wildlife Services. Sometimes they're able to help with those kinds of situations.
Okay, we're getting a lot of hunting and fishing questions. Again, this is the non-game show, so keep your questions limited to things that pertain to non-game wildlife. And the number again to call, 1-800-944-4664. Jamie from Hopkins County, where's the best place to see migrating sandhill cranes in Kentucky? Getting to be a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, the best place to see them would probably be Barren River State Park. They have crane watch weekends. If you Google it, it comes up very readily. Those are a lot of fun, and you can go out and see large numbers of cranes there. You can also just drive through the town of Cecilia, Kentucky during migration season and see large numbers of cranes just on the side of the road.
Dan's from Campbell County. The frog population seems to have been down the last couple of years. Is there a reason for this, or is that actually happening?
I haven't noticed anything like that. I assume he's talking about bullfrogs, and there do seem to be fewer bullfrogs this year than I've seen in other years, and I have no idea what's happening. We haven't been able to pick up any evidence of any disease. We might have had a lot of mortality from cold weather last winter. I don't really know how else to explain it.
Doug Curl wants to know, he said, I have a hummingbird feeder up all the summer in his backyard in Versailles and has not seen any. Any tips on attracting them, getting them in there?
Well, sometimes folks notice differences in hummingbirds using the feeders if there's been brush cleared nearby. You got to have a little bit of shrubby habitat or, you know, kind of an older grown-up area for hummingbirds to be attracted. Having lots of red on the feeder is good. You don't need the red food. That actually is bad for the birds. But, you know, having red flowers growing in the yard near the feeder, having lots of red on the feeder is a good thing for attracting hummingbirds.
Amy is from Montgomery County. Just saw the mussels on the show, and she had the same reaction that I did. If I see something like that, of course, I'm thinking about going down south and getting oysters. Are any of them good to eat?
I get that question a lot. Again, these animals are filter feeders, and they're filtering all the nasty bacteria that's in our water, concentrating it in their shells, and also a lot of sand particles and mud. And so I guess if you like to chew on sand and mud and bacteria, then it would be okay to eat. But I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of people do eat the oysters, and sometimes those oysters in commercial markets are purged of their nastiness, I guess, but they're still nasty inside to me. So.
Lars is from Bullitt County. How can I get rid of beavers in his creek? That's a pretty common question. We wouldn't think about seeing a beaver 40, 50 years ago. Now they're everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a job for one of those critter control companies.
And there are plenty of folks out there.
There are a lot of people out there who
Can they
will
contact
take
us
that
through
on.
the department? Are there? Does the department have lists of those
I
folks?
think we have a list.
And
I would get in touch with the local conservation officer or local wildlife biologist.
Yeah, and you can reach us at #1 Sportsman's Lane if you want to write us, Frankfort, Kentucky 40601, or call us at 1-800-858-1549 or www.fw.ky.gov, and we'll be glad to talk to you about that. We have lists of all kinds of stuff. Our information, people, I'm going to brag on them for just a second. You call that 1-800-858-1549 number, and you're going to get a hold of an expert that knows a lot about a lot of issues. So don't hesitate to call out. They're good folks. Bill Henderson is from Trimble County. John, is the rough green snake difficult to keep in captivity?
They do pretty well. You need to keep them in a terrarium where they can climb. And they spend a lot of time up on a tree branch or up in a plant, and they do real well on crickets, which you can get from the bait shop. They'll eat waxworms. Don't feed them mealworms. Those are kind of bad for them. They also like soft-bodied caterpillars and grasshoppers. And they do real well. We had them at the Salado Center that lived 4 to 5 years, and that's about their lifespan.
Glenn is from Bowling Green. He's got property in Butler County, and he saw what he thought was a mink. Is that possible?
Mink are everywhere in the state.
Yes, they are.
They're in every county and probably along every creek.
All right, we're getting a lot of bear questions. Somebody's wanting to know if we're stocking them, and we are not. We don't stock bear. They're coming in on their own, and they're here. They have been for a while. Alan is from Butler County, wants to know if turtles in lakes, if you got a bunch of turtles in your lakes, are they going to eat your fish?
It depends on what kind of turtle. Snapping turtles regularly eat fish, but snapping turtles will eat anything. And they'll eat dead fish, live fish, whatever. And it's probably not a problem. It's more of a improve the quality of the remaining fish stock. The red-eared sliders that people see in ponds a lot are mostly vegetarian and eat insects, but they will feed on dead fish.
Glenn is from Cincinnati, Ohio, and we want to thank all our viewers in Ohio, Indiana, and the surrounding states. What is the status of the barn owl population? Are they holding pretty steady, as far as you know?
Well, barn owls are a species of concern in Kentucky, and about 6 years ago we started a research project on them, just surveying extensively for them. And we found that they were very rare when we started paying attention to them. In fact, the first time we did an inventory for them, we found 25 pairs throughout the whole state, which is just a lot fewer than you'd expect for how much farm-type habitat we have. So we've put a lot of work into putting up nest boxes for them and working with landowners. And we do find that they're increasing, and so we'd like to know about more barn owls on the landscape, and if anybody has a barn owl in their barn, I highly encourage you to call us so that we can work with you on a nest box.
Diddle Johnson is from Butler County. Do we have armadillos in Kentucky?
Yes, we do, and they're almost all the way across the state now.
And we're not stocking them.
And we don't stock them. They've spread on their own over about the last 7 or 8 years, and I see at least one on the Western Kentucky Parkway every time I go out west, but we've had them as far east as Knott County, McCreary County, Moorhead, several bluegrass counties, wow. Louisville. They're getting to just about across the state.
Eric is from Bullitt County. Emerald ash borer, is it expanding? About the same, getting worse? What's going on with them?
I assume that they're pretty well established everywhere. I'm seeing an awful lot of ash tree mortality from emerald ash borers, especially in the bluegrass, where we had an awful lot of white ash. It was a really common forest tree.
All my ash trees are gone. It's a sad, sad thing. I've had plenty of firewood.
It's a sad thing.
Katie, Kathy wants to know, she's from Logan County, do red-tailed hawks mate for life? They'll mostly keep the same mate year after year, and if one of the mate dies, they will usually be replaced by another bird. With most birds of prey, we see that type of thing. There's occasional divorces, usually if there's not good success in productivity. Say they have several failed nesting attempts, sometimes they'll abandon that territory and find a new mate. Okay, John McGregor, we need to revisit this because a lot of folks are just tuning in and want to know about the, let's revisit the cougars. Casey Carpenter wants to know, as far as cougars go, if you see one, can you kill it?
I don't know. That's a law enforcement question.
Right.
My top of the head answer is no, because you don't know whether it's an eastern cougar, which is thought to be extinct. You're not sure where it came from. If we want to be able to document what our cougars are, if someone can get a hair sample, that would be great, like from a barbed wire fence or something like that. We could check DNA on that.
So you're not saying go up and grab a handful of hair?
No, and if somebody accidentally shoots one, please
or sees one down
let somebody know and get a hair sample from it, and because we'd really like to know what our cougars are. We know we have a few, and we've had some of our wildlife biologists have seen them, so it's not like we just don't believe people.
Frida is from Carlisle. How to keep sparrows out of the bluebird boxes?
Oh,
and a follow-up to that, what time of year do you clean them out?
Okay. Yeah, house sparrows can be a terrible problem in bluebird boxes. What I do is if I see house sparrows building in a bluebird box, that nest is not protected, so it can be removed. So I keep pulling the house sparrow nest out until the house sparrows get tired of using that spot because they're not making any progress, and then the bluebirds can nest there. The best time to clean out bluebird boxes, I would say, would be in February, right before they come back to nest in March. There's some thought that that nesting material in the box over the winter can help them keep warm, and so February would probably be the best time.
Well, we got you here. No name, but somebody wants to know what happened to the whippoorwills.
Well, that's a question I get a lot, and there's definitely a sense of whippoorwill decline. We're just starting to do some surveys for whippoorwills and chuck-wills widows. Both of these birds nest in kind of at forest edges on the ground. I don't know that anybody really knows the answer yet for their decline. There needs to be some research done there, but I have a gut feeling that maybe feral cats and coyotes might be an issue just because it's a ground nesting bird, often close to agricultural areas. So, but we're looking into it, and hopefully we'll have some answers soon.
Tony is from Robertson County. Is it illegal to use mussels as fish bait?
Again, that's a law enforcement question, but yes, you can't use them as bait. You can only collect mussels for personal use and not for bait, not for sale, and things like that. And one of the main reasons is because we have such a high number of endangered species, and you never know when you're going to be picking something that might be really rare. And so it's not suggested that they're used for bait at all. It's against the law.
Chris is from Jefferson County, and his neighbors have bats in their attic. Are there any dangers to that? Is there anything they need to worry about having bats?
I never considered it a problem, but there's...
You probably liked it.
There can be an odor problem, and there are questions about something like histoplasmosis if it's a really dry attic, but that's more associated with pigeon dung and chicken manure than bats. There's always a possibility that you could have a bat with rabies and there could be a bite, but generally it's a hygiene issue more than anything else. And in order to exclude the bats, you need to get a professional to actually take a look at your attic and do a professional exclusion. And there are a lot of people who do that.
I think my dad had issues, and of course he's a real soft-hearted guy. He waited till they flew out one night and then went up there and fixed everything up so they couldn't get back in. I think he felt bad and opened it back up.
That works really well, and especially this time of year because all the bats have raised their young, and so you're not going to have flightless young, trapped in your attic. And one way to do it is if you see where they're coming out, you can take like black plastic sheeting and just tack it to the roof right above where the bats go in and out. Wait till they come out, and then just hang that sheeting down, and they can't figure out how to get back in.
Jason is from Clark County, Indiana. Let's revisit this because we're getting a lot more of these questions. He wants to know about zebra mussels again. Where are they, and are they still an issue?
Again, they're mostly limited to the Ohio River main stem where there's barge traffic. They can really increase in populations in some years. It's kind of the way they grow and everything. If they're really doing well this year, we won't know about it till next year, till we see the populations. But when the population goes up, you'll notice them on the shores of the banks and on any kind of debris that you see floating, and there'll be just tons, and they can get thousands per square meter, and really can cause problems. And then hopefully they'll disappear, or at least the population will be really low the following few years. So.
Bill's from Anderson County. Are there any flying squirrels in Kentucky anymore?
They are in every county, and they're surprisingly common.
You hardly ever see them, though. I mean, they're pretty nocturnal.
You hardly ever see them. If you want to see flying squirrels, go over to Natural Bridge State Park, and as long as the bird feeders are being filled, if you eat dinner there and then go out right after dark, you can see flying squirrels visiting the bird feeders. They're probably in every sizable woodlot in Kentucky. And in the wintertime, you can walk around the woods at night, and you can hear them twittering up in the trees. And they're really common.
I was cutting down an old redbud tree. It was rotted in the middle. I was afraid it was going to fall over by the house, and I cut it. There was a little hole in the top. And you should have seen them coming out of there, one after another, after another, after another. I see a little pair of eyes, and boom, they'd take off. Okay, odd question, but nonetheless, here it is. And again, we're not making fun of anybody, but Arliss from Henry County, could he feed the hummingbirds Gatorade?
No, that wouldn't be recommended. Either I would recommend buying hummingbird food that isn't dyed red at the store, or mixing up a sugar water mixture. It's better just to keep it simple when it comes to the hummingbirds. And a sugar water mixture, the recommended ratio is usually 4 cups water to 1 cup sugar. And you keep it in your fridge. You make sure you keep it fresh and replaced in the feeder. It shouldn't be in there more than 4 or 5 days, otherwise it goes bad.
Bill Baker is from Hamilton County, around Cincinnati. What's the difference between a water moccasin and a copperhead and a water snake? And another question earlier, they wanted to know about a water snake and a copperhead. Are there similarities? Are there patterns?
Our water snakes, a lot of our water snakes look venomous. They have, our banded water snake or northern water snake has cross bands, and when one gets angry, it flattens out its head. First thing to learn is where these things are found, and the cottonmouth in Kentucky is only in the western coalfield, LBL, and the Jackson Purchase, so it's in the western part of the state. But a cottonmouth, if you walk up on it, if you look straight down at the head, cottonmouth has kind of a concave head on the sides, and you cannot see the eyes if you're looking straight down. So that's a real good way to recognize a cottonmouth, and they have a very large head, and they usually throw that mouth open and just hold the mouth open, pointed right towards you, like they did on the TV show that we did a few weeks ago with the cottonmouth at the Salado Center.
Have you got critters?
Yeah, I've got some critters.
Show us some critters real quick while I'm digging for some questions.
Okay.
And feel free, again, if you want to answer your questions on Facebook, check out our Kentucky Afield Facebook page. Get on there and like it, and you can ask questions on there as well.
I actually brought the whole state with me.
Uh-oh.
This
could get wild.
This represents the Jackson Purchase and the western coalfield. This is a crawfish frog.
A crawfish frog. Why do they call it a crawfish frog?
These live in crayfish burrows. It's the only North American vertebrate that requires an invertebrate as a place to live, and they're pretty rare. This guy came from dang.
Oops.
Can somebody get him? Yeah. Came from West Kentucky Wildlife Management Area.
I'm wired in. Yeah, I knew this.
Your own money.
There's the last crayfish frog in the world.
Yeah.
Get him, Monty. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey. Woo!
I was afraid that would happen.
Monty, I would clap if I could. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
So, anyway, I was out there doing surveys this spring. I do surveys when they breed in March, and then I was out there checking on reproduction, and I picked up a couple of tadpoles, and I brought them home, and I now have 2 crawfish frogs about that big.
You know, a lot of people around the state, and I'm surprised we haven't, John's got an interesting job. He crawls around in the weeds at night and is in the middle of, swamps and stuff. And I think a lot of the Bigfoot sightings that are out and about are probably directly related to John.
Can you guys get this?
I think it is John McGregor, is Bigfoot.
Pretty good theory.
And what's that right there?
This is a green salamander.
Okay.
And this species is only found in eastern Kentucky and lives in crevices in sandstone outcrops and cliffs. I caught this one yesterday in Laurel County, back in a crevice along a cliff face. And we have a little population of these around Yellowbank Wildlife Area also, along the Ohio River. But this is kind of the characteristic salamander from eastern Kentucky if you're a biologist, and I don't know, it's just a great thing that eastern Kentucky has these. And then I brought another salamander that's the limestone area species, and this guy may run.
Of all the different species and critters that you mess with, what's your favorite?
Salamanders.
Salamanders?
Are my
Why salamanders?
Look at that. How can you not?
It's
really,
pretty.
That's a cave salamander right there.
He's fast.
And they are in all the limestone areas of the state. So they're really common all through the bluegrass. And if you have salamanders in your basement and they're orange,
that's
it's
more likely
probably a cave salamander. Really long tail. They live in spring houses. springs, caves, rock outcrops. So this one came from a rock outcrop about 2 miles down the road from my house in Jessamine County.
How many species of salamander do we have?
We have 35 different kinds of salamanders.
35, that's a lot.
Which is really good, yeah. I mean, I think Tennessee and North Carolina are ahead of us, but we're right up there in the top 5 in salamander diversity.
Wow.
So Eastern Kentucky, bluegrass, and then the crawfish frog is the western end of the state. And by the way, if you have something like this in your basement or your spring house, take a photo of it and send it to me.
You like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love it.
Go ahead and tell
stuff.
people how they can email you and send you a picture of that.
You can just send an email to our general information center, and they'll send it to me. Anything that has to do with weird stuff, they forward it to me. So
www.fw.ky.gov. Attention.
Yeah, or just info.center@ky.gov.
Gotcha. And if you have any
people
questions,
can't spell my name, John McGregor. You know, I have an extra letter in there, unlike Monty. So.
And if you have any other questions out there that we don't answer tonight, feel free to get a hold of us there at the same number. Also, you can write us the old-fashioned way, number 1 Sportsman's Lane, Frankfort, Kentucky 40601, and somebody will answer your questions. Now, Steve from Bullitt County wants to know, and we're getting a lot of these, are there any wild or feral pigs in Kentucky?
Yes.
And that's not something we should be happy about. A lot of people, you know, I watch some of these hunting shows where they glamorize that, and all they are is farm pigs. We do not want those in Kentucky. Tell them why we do not want that. If we like our deer and our turkey, why do we not want pigs?
They're hell on salamanders. I hate to use. No, they root up habitat, you know, and they ruin springs and wetlands, and they're really hard on native orchids and a lot of native wildlife. They eat the eggs of ground nesting birds. They eat rattlesnakes and copperheads, and I view that as a really bad thing. But some people don't. But they spread diseases to livestock, and that's a really major reason to discourage them.
I have a young caller, Gunnar Thompson. He's from Grayson. Is it possible for snakes to bite you underwater?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, snakes can bite underwater. I mean, venomous snakes and harmless snakes. I have been bitten by many water snakes that I grabbed that were underwater, and they turn around and they nail you just like they would on land.
You know, I've seen this guy bitten by I don't know how many snakes, and you know, and you don't even flinch. I mean, it's like, oh, and there's blood.
What can I say?
I flinch.
It's like beekeepers get stung by bees.
I guess this is true. Paul's from Mercer County wants to know, how can I attract bats to a bat box? And where would be the most likely place to put that?
The people to talk to are Bat Conservation International, and they have many different types of bat house plans. You want to put a bat box in a sunny place where it gets lots and lots of heat. You want it at least 15 feet off the ground so that nobody can disturb it. And you want to have multiple crevices in it for the bats to roost in. There's a really nice working bat house at Land Between the Lakes at the Nature Center out there. If you want to get an idea of what one looks like that has a nice bat colony in it, that's a good place to go.
Sandy is from Corbin. Cranes, where do they nest?
Sandhill cranes nest up north in places like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Canada. But they might be talking about great blue herons. Sometimes people call those cranes too, and they nest in rookeries, which is a group of a bunch of nests close to water. We have rookeries that have 5 nests in them, and we have rookeries that have thousands of nests in Kentucky of great blue herons.
Here's an interesting one. Corey from Butler County. Her pond, his or her, has freshwater jellyfish. What fish would help get rid of these? Do you know?
The jellyfish, it's a life stage of a group of aquatic organisms, and people don't see them very often. But if you go fishing at night on Laurel River Lake or parts of Lake Cumberland or a lot of our lakes that don't have a whole high nutrient load, you can see freshwater jellyfish. And they show up in streams sometimes and in the river. And it's called the Medusa stage. It doesn't survive for very long, and it's just kind of a neat thing. They don't hurt anything.
We do have, it's like scorpions. We do have scorpions as well.
Yeah, I almost brought a scorpion. I picked one up yesterday to bring it in, but then I started thinking about how do you show it to people. So, and I can picture it walking around my hand.
All right, Bob from Davis County. Haven't seen many nighthawks lately. First of all, tell us what a nighthawk is and wants to know if their numbers are still good.
Well, a nighthawk is like a whippoorwill or a chuck-will's widow, but nighthawks like to spend time in much more open habitat, and most of ours are found right in the middle of towns. They historically nested on rocky outcrops and kind of open areas, so now they'll find a roof in town that's covered with gravel, very handy for nesting. And I've not heard anything about nighthawk declines. They seem to be doing pretty well because they do so well in urban habitats.
Cooper is from Bourbon County. Saw a velvet ant. Interesting critter. They make a little high-pitched noise. Is this the only time they've seen one? Is it common?
They're fairly common. I see them every year, usually either on a sidewalk or on a dirt road or a sand road. They run around on the ground, and they're really a species of wasp. They're interesting looking, and they can sting really hard. Cow killer is a common name for them, and I got stung by one once, and that's a pretty good name.
Have you been bit by a copperhead?
One time.
How bad was it?
It felt like somebody had injected molten metal into my thumb.
Jack Martin, this is a serious question. Is Bigfoot native to Kentucky, or was it stocked by the department? It's a big helicopter.
We didn't stock Bigfoot.
He's taking the biologist approach. I'm telling you, this guy gets out and crawls around ponds in the middle of the night. That's his job, to look for different snakes, and all the sightings are probably you. I
have never seen a Bigfoot.
And you've been into places.
I try to keep an open mind on things like that. KentuckyBigfoot.com is a pretty interesting site if you want to read about Bigfoot observations.
All right, before we descend any further, Arnold from Floyd County. Are there any poisonous lizards in Kentucky? And more than one person has asked that tonight.
No. I kind of want to qualify that, though, because five-line skinks have a chemical protection that apparently sickens some house cats. So a house cat can catch a skink, and that's a shiny lizard with a blue tail and stripes on it, and chew that up, and sometimes the cat will throw up afterwards. It's not anything that is life-threatening, but there's poisonous and there's venomous, and I would not eat a five-line skink if I were.
All right, a lot of people are asking, and this is Leroy from Winchester, how do you get rid of moles in your yard? A lot of people are asking that question.
I don't know.
You're not the mole expert?
No.
The mole expert is not here tonight. Next time there has to be.
They have mole traps, those plunge things. And people put those spinning sunflowers out there, and the vibrations in the ground are supposed to discourage them, but I have no idea. Moles are there to eat grubs,
Yeah. We are getting a lot of these, a whole lot of these. Are we still seeing eagles? Are they still seeing eagles in Fayette County? This is Dan, but we're getting a lot of folks. Let's talk about how widely eagles are being seen around the state of Kentucky right now.
Yeah, we still monitor bald eagles very closely because they used to be on the endangered species list. They were taken off in 2007, but we're required to monitor them for another 20 years or so. And so we have 123 nesting pairs in the state now. They're doing really great. Every year we find more nests. Used to be that we had most of the eagles in western Kentucky, but now we have eagles just about statewide. We have nests on almost every large reservoir and river in the state. Especially this time of year when the eagles start to migrate, we see eagles in every county of Kentucky. And so, we do have reports at Lexington, usually at least once a year. One shows up at the reservoir there. We get a lot of birds passing through in the wintertime. They'll show up at farm ponds, reservoirs. We have winter eagle surveys that we do where we usually count at least 400 birds in the state in the wintertime. So bald eagles are doing great.
Tom's from Scott County. Why do there seem to be so many toads this year? Is it a bumper crop of toads this year?
We had a great spring for toads. The American toads mate and lay eggs in late March and early April. We had a lot of rain then, so you had a lot of flooded fields, and they lay eggs in kind of in temporary water, road ruts, kind of grubby ponds that you don't think too much of, and that's perfect. And we had toads by the billions at Kentucky River WMA this year, and in some old drainage ditches that held water. It's just a good year for them.
Mike is from Washington County. We don't see many meadowlarks anymore. Is there a decline on meadowlarks?
Not necessarily, but there could be local declines just depending on the habitat. Meadowlarks really like a good thick hay field, and so if somebody has maybe started mowing hay or mowing a pasture more than they used to, that could certainly result in a lot less meadowlarks. Meadowlarks don't like row crops. They want a good thick hay or pasture field, so it's probably a habitat issue locally.
Will's from Jackson. What happened to all the screech owls?
Oh, you know, I don't know about any declines in screech owls. That might be something local too. Screech owls rely on cavities for nesting, and so if you take down just a few dead trees where they used to nest, that can you know, eliminate all the screech owls in the area. So it's important to keep dead trees standing where it's safe to do so, and screech owls also like to use nest boxes. So like a kestrel or a screech owl style nest box can be very successful for them. Maybe they'd be able to attract them back.
Robert's from Kenton County. This is more of a hunting question, but a lot of people are asking this, so this is something he's mistaken about. Is it illegal to shoot coyotes? No, it's not illegal to shoot coyotes year-round. Check the regs in the hunting guide. And now back to the non-game show. All right, Heidi's from Madison County. Are there any reports of wildcats in Madison County? And should residents be worried for their safety?
Okay, wildcats are bobcats.
Bobcats, thank you.
And they are statewide. People don't see them, but they're there, and they're in every county and doing fairly well.
Okay, now here's a bunch more of these. Let's just hit it again. Randy's from Jessamine County. As a child, he heard lots of whippoorwills, but now, just touch on that real briefly because we're getting a bunch of those. And these are brand new questions.
There's definitely a sense that there's been decline in whippoorwills and chuck-wills widows. And there's not a real good answer for that just yet. It's something that's just been kind of brought to light in the bird conservation community, and it seems like it's somewhat recent. And so there's a lot of research that's starting now, and we hope to have some answers. It could be a rise in ground predators because these are ground nesting birds.
Phillips from Fayette County. Can armadillos carry leprosy?
They are a natural reservoir of leprosy.
Ooh. So don't hug an armadillo.
Yeah. I suggest not keeping an armadillo as a pet or messing with one.
So that's the truth.
Yeah.
Wow. Becky's from Grayson. What do you do when you find an injured raptor, like a hawk or an owl or anything like that?
That's a good question. We have a list on our website of permitted wildlife rehabilitators, and it says next to each rehabilitator what they do, if they do birds or whatever. It's good to call those rehabilitators as soon as you find the bird. It's not against the law to help that bird and get it to a rehabilitator. It is against the law to keep that bird yourself and try to fix it up. But we have several very talented folks across the state that help take care of those problems.
Rogers from Jefferson County. Are there still any yellow or black-billed cuckoos in Kentucky?
Yes, black-billed cuckoos are pretty rare, but we have quite a few yellow-billed cuckoos. They seem to be somewhat common.
Gene is from Nelson County. Will a black snake kill a venomous snake?
Depends on what you mean by a black snake. Black racers, which are satiny black, are big snake eaters. They eat rodents, snakes, insects, anything they can catch, and they will kill and eat venomous snakes. Black king snake, which is black with a little bit of yellow on it, also is a big snake eater, and they feed on snakes of all types. And a black rat snake, or cowsucker as people call them, is not much of a snake eater. And usually when people say a black snake, that's what they're talking about. So they pretty much can coexist with any other kind of snake.
A lot of folks, this is Ann from Powell County, want to know about the martins.
Purple martins are pretty common in Kentucky. The way you can attract them is by putting up a martin house. Close to water is usually best. They have to be about 15 feet high. You want the box to be accessible so you can clean them out once a year.
Aren't you amazed how quick this goes? That didn't seem like an hour, and we could have answered another 500 questions. Thank you so much for calling in. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and like it. You can ask questions all through the week. We'll try to answer them as much as we can. Thank you all for being here. And let's try to sneak one more in here. Kenneth Ashley Blair, any bald eagles in Marion County?
Not that we know of. They could pass through, but we don't know of any nesting there.
All right, Robert from Franklin County, what's a blowing viper?
A blowing viper is a hognose snake. Completely harmless, found clear across the state, but they're not very common. So if he sees one, take a photo of it and send it to me, and I'll get back to him and get the information.
You might be getting a lot of photos.
I love that.